All right, ladies and gentlemen, or should I say friends, Romans and Armadalians, will that work? Look, I'm Raymond Sexton. I'm a new resident here. I live on Kooyong Road and I walk down the street here fairly regularly. But to give you a bit of background, I was for 7 years chairman of Dublin Civic Trust, which protects a lot of the Georgian heritage in Dublin. So I'm pretty experienced with this type of a mess, being truthful, right? So the first thing I want to do, because I've been doing some study, is I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we're having this gathering, the Wurundjeri people, their elders and family, past and present. I've got 3 quotes which I'm going to give, and then I'm going to people can say something and hand over to Jason Ball. Jason is from the Green Party. I've got a letter for Richard Wynne. He's too busy to turn up. Daniel Andrews is too busy. He's pouring concrete somewhere. So basically, what we've got to do is we've got to make an impact so they start listening to us. So there's 3 quotes I'm going to use today to put it in context. The first one is, we learn from history that we learn nothing from history. So I'm suggesting today, right, that anybody that buys an apartment in there should be shunned. Anybody that helps design that should be shunned, okay? And Norton, Rose, Fulbright, who have facilitated this, should be told that they are not the 2018 and 19 Environmental and Planning Lawyers of the Year, should not be given any work or business. So ring your friends and tell them that if anybody can facilitate this type of devastation, they need to shun Norton, Rose, Fulbright. So if you're in another street, they're coming for you as well. So tonight, this is the siege of Armadale. Tell people this is not good enough. I want an apology. Okay? I want an apology for this. This is intimidation. So that's all I wanted to say tonight. Now, poor Jason has to follow me, so I'm going to hand him up. Come up.
Well done. It is unsurprising to me that there are so many of you here when you have someone with the passion of Raymond leading this community. I wanted to come down here as the Greens candidate for the seat of Higgins to say that you have my support and that I share your outrage as to what has happened right behind me. If we don't take a stand now, this is just the beginning, right? We have a planning system that puts property developers ahead of the community. And we have a Labor Party and we have a Liberal Party who are unwilling to reform that system because they are both in the pockets of property developers. The Greens are the only party who refuse to take donations from property developers. We also refuse to take donations from the fossil fuel companies, from the pokies barons, from the big banks. You can trust that we put people and the environment at the heart of our policies and our decisions. And that's why I'm here standing beside you after what has happened here at 34 Armadale Street. This next election is going to be a circuit breaker. Our country is at a crossroads, and when it comes to the question of integrity in politics, the major parties have a lot to answer for, and it will be the Greens who are holding them to account. At a federal level, the Greens are calling for an anti-corruption commission that is independent, that has the power to investigate politicians, big business, and unions for their dealings. We have such a body at a state level. We don't have such a body at a federal level. At the state level, the Greens are calling for an overhaul of our planning laws to put the power back to councils and back to the community to improve and increase third-party rights when it comes to objecting to these decisions, and to ensure that those loopholes that allow for a demolition order when there is a VCAT hearing to review the heritage listing of a property cannot happen. And in the spirit of sharing quotes, Raymond, I want to finish by sharing a quote from Margaret Mead, the famous anthropologist, who once said that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Now, what brought me down here today more than anything was I wanted to hear from all of you. I want to hear your stories. I want to hear your concerns as to what has happened here and where to go from here. And so I would actually be really happy to go around for those who want to say something, or if you have a question, shoot up your hand and you're more than happy to take it. But I see this more, maybe less as a Q&A and more as a group conversation for where we can go from here. So thank you. It is incredible to see so many of you here. It really shows that you guys have a passion for your community and a passion for protecting the heritage of our area, and we need greater planning laws to ensure that our community remains the livable community and continues to thrive into the future. So thank you so much for having me and for being here this afternoon.
I just suggest, and I don't know how, from the council, the state government, the federal government, no, none of them, I'm glad at least you're here, thank you for coming, no one listened to us. And when I heard that budget just throwing money at us to bribe us, there's more to a community than money, but perhaps money could be raised to alleviate slightly the damage and make that a park, an extension of a park, because as you were saying, Raymond, we're going to boycott the people that buy the flats. That would not lessen the anguish and the damage. But that's all I will say now.
Thank you for sharing. And I'll say that, I mean, we can go further. I mean, look at the Corkman pub in Carlton. We can demand that those developers rebuild that house brick by brick, if indeed it was shown at that VCAT hearing that it did have heritage value. That's what they shouldn't get away with it. They shouldn't cop the fine that is, only a small blip in the profits that they would be making from redeveloping this house. It needs to be a considerable cost. It needs to be not worth it for them to do what they've done. They needed to wait 2 weeks. 2 weeks was all they needed to wait. And as I said, this is only the beginning if we don't take a stand now. Go ahead.
The VCAT hearing on the 15th was not to review the heritage listing. The VCAT hearing is to review the application to build. So we couldn't even get a review for heritage listing.
There was no review of the heritage listing. That couldn't happen. So unfortunately, they were well within their legal rights to demolish the house before the hearing.
I'd like to say something in the context that the developers are legally able to do what they do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who you can take your concerns to. It's virtually impossible to rescind a demolition permit. And that we've been to the Stonnington Council and they would give us no help or issue in that context. The demolition permit had been given and the developer is able to do what they want. And
I stand corrected on what the review was for, but it is still a sense that it is the system that is wrong when that is able to happen, and so we need to fix the system. That's legal, absolutely.
Property without having a proper building permit. So this sort of issue is quite wrong and should not be allowed. But we are really in the context of too late she cried. The horse has bolted. This should never have happened, but the local population could do nothing to stop it, despite thousands of people not wanting this to happen.
I hear that.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
This is happening not just here. This is happening not just here, but also in Wattle Tree Road up there. Any large house, whether it's historically important or not, is being knocked down. And now it's all right. Nobody seems to protest against all those other houses, but it's the same thing. It's crowding more people into the area. If you look at this, all right, we've lost one house, but isn't it wonderful? We'll get room there for 10 houses now, with 10 times as many people. And why do we need 10 times as many people? Because the government has a policy of bringing in people. The growth in Melbourne is intolerable, and you can't do anything about it. If that demand is there, if that growth is there, this is going to happen. Not just to historic houses, but to all the houses. And it's important that you look at the cause. If you don't look at the cause, you'll go nowhere. And the cause is the growth, this massive growth that's going on, that's propping up our economy. And unless you have some stop to the mad immigration that's going on, this will happen everywhere. And it's ridiculous just to say, isn't it a wonderful house? This is a tragedy, and it's going to happen. Unless we stop this mad growth, you're going to find that all these people who are coming into Melbourne have to be housed somewhere, and you can't just say, go off to Frankston. The suburbs go from Frankston to Werribee as it is. And we've got the city going up with sort of like chook houses, one on top of another, and that's the government's policy. And anybody who promotes this mad growth, Greens included, needs to think, is that what we want? Is this what we want for Australia? Do we want this traffic? Do we want this sort of loss of our heritage? Or are we going to do something about it and try and stop this mad growth? Thank you.
Good on you.
That is, and I'll comment on that. Like, heritage is just one factor, right? Heritage is just one factor. The Greens have policies to improve the planning system that includes height restrictions, that includes environmental and energy improvements in households, that includes green space. These are laws that are set by the state government. They can impose that on property developers to ensure the livability and the sustainable growth of our communities. And so protecting heritage is but one part of the broken system that we have here in state and local politics.
This
Go ahead.
lady here.
You've got open borders as your policy. Like, open borders as part of your policy, you do. And high immigration, like Liberal Party is the same, Labor Party not different, but yours is even more open. And we're bringing in probably 400,000 people a year now. And we've been doing this for so many years, and now people are concerned because they can see the result of this growth. And you've got to look at the population increase, urban, rural and natural. Now, I was brought up in the Wimmera. I know all about the natural environment, and the Greens policy is, and also Liberal Labor, they're behind you in numbers. And it's a disaster for this oldest, driest continent in the world. Quite frankly.
To be clear, the Greens are not proposing increases in immigration. We want to increase our humanitarian intake, which is a relatively small amount of people compared to the amount of people who are coming here as migrants. But our policies are not open borders. We have limits. And it's in line with what Labor and Liberal are suggesting when it comes to immigration. What we do want to increase is the amount of people seeking asylum and refugees that we are taking in, so we can create safer pathways for people to come here so they don't have to get on boats. We're getting slightly off topic, but I do take the point that population growth is a factor that we need to consider when it comes to the livability of our community and our state. So I take your point.
What I'd like to highlight here is, where is the mayor and where are the councillors and where is Fiona MacLeod? Where are these people? There's obviously a big dinner somewhere, right? You know what I mean? There's obviously a dinner somewhere, $200 a head or something, because they're certainly not here. In Ireland, it's about turning up, right? Right? So that's my disappointment. Where are they? Like, I shouldn't be
part of the system.
But you front up if you're the mayor. Let's be honest, if you're the mayor.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
but he's not a representative of people like us. What he actually is some person who's actually in the pocket of the bloody developers. And it's obvious that that's what they're going to do. I object to the fact that it's an 1880 building.
Yeah.
That's my personal view. I live around here in rented accommodation. It doesn't make that much difference to me.
Yeah.
What upsets me is that they can go ahead and knock an 1880 building down and nobody pitches up to explain the reason why. I wanted to ask a question. I don't even know who's responsible. Is it the government? Is it the local council? Is it Stonnington? Who's responsible for making a decision like that? I can't get an answer.
Well, that's what I said to you about
Who
death.
runs Goldfields? Why
It's
is that
Marco
made-
Gattino is the man who runs Goldfield, but what's happened here is they've sliced and diced the responsibility so thinly that everybody points the finger further up and down the food chain. The reason I've targeted the minister, and I call him again, for concrete pouring, Daniel Andrews, is because he's the only one at the moment, because I voted for him, I'll be honest with you, that actually has the power. Because if he was here tonight, he could have a cabinet meeting and he could get this fixed. But they don't answer.
It's gone. So
Well, look, I'll go with the other ladies. I know that. We'll go with the ladies' idea. Let's extend Armadale Reserve across the street. Let's get an apology. Right? Is there an apology? Does anybody feel like they're due an apology? I certainly feel like I'm due an apology.
Certainly.
Right? I need an apology. And I'd like a park over there. And then we may be able to feel someone maybe, I don't know,